record keeping and meal counts. In this presentation, we will review administrative records, operating cost records, maintaining records of costs and tracking funds, meal count records. Administrative records, program monitoring and assistance. The sponsor must maintain all program financial records documenting program income and program expense, such as invoices and receipts, bank statements, checking account ledgers, program reimbursement payments received, program advance payments received if applicable, and interest earned, fundings occurring to SFSP, and disbursements to sponsor facilities to ensure documentation of the nonprofit food service account to ensure the physical integrity of the SFSP paid to the sponsor. Other administrative records include administrative costs, training records, site visits, review records. Administrative costs. Costs incurred for planning, organizing, and administering the program activities include preparing and applying for participation, establishing the eligibility for open or restricted open sites by collecting the required data, attending training provided by the state agency, hiring and training site and administrative personnel, visiting sites, reviewing and monitoring operations at sites, and documenting these visits and reviews. Preparing and submitting a plan for and summary of the invitation to bid when the sponsor wants to contract with a food service management service. Preparing and submitting claims for reimbursement, performing other activities that are necessary for planning, organizing, and managing the program. Training records. Sponsors must keep records that document dates of training for site and administrative personnel. Attendance at each training session must be documented by a sign-in sheet. Topics covered at each training session. Site visit review records. Sponsors must be able to document that they have met their monitoring requirements. Monitors must submit a report for pre-approval site visits during the first week of program operations, site visits throughout the summer. Monitors must submit a review report form for each site review during the first 4 weeks of program operations. Operating costs. Operating costs are allowable costs incurred by the sponsor for preparing and serving meals to eligible children. These costs include, but are not limited to, cost of food use, labor, non-food supplies, and space for the food service. Operating cost records. Food costs for on-site preparation. Supporting documentation for food service include, at a minimum, reports that record the amount of foods received from the supplier, purchasing invoices, records for any returns, discounts, and other credits not reflected on purchase invoices. Inventory records that reflect the kinds of food items at the beginning and end of inventory period. Food costs for vended programs. Sponsors must maintain records that include the signed delivery slips to support the claim for reimbursement. During meal delivery, site supervisor or designated site personnel should determine the type and quantity of meals received, ensure that meals meet the meal pattern requirements, meaning that all of the required components are included in those meals. Note any errors or differences on the delivery slip. Maintain the signed detailed delivery slip to support the sponsor's claim for reimbursement. Labor costs. Costs include compensation by sponsors for labor that is required to prepare and serve meals, to supervise children during the meal service, and to clean up after the meal service. Costs may include wages, salaries, employee benefits, and the share of taxes paid by the sponsors. Accurate time and attendant records of all labor costs reported to the state agency. Here's a helpful resource that provides more detailed information on program operating costs, program administrative costs, as well as unallowable costs. Maintaining records of costs and tracking funds. Records must be maintained that document the amount and purpose of all administrative costs attributed to the SFSP program. Sponsors must be able to account for the receipt, obligation, and expenditure of all SFSP funds. Program and non-program functions must be separated or allocated properly. Retention of records. Sponsors must maintain all records for the 3 years after the end of the fiscal year operation, or longer if required by the state agency. Records must be accessible to federal and state agency personnel for audit and review purposes. Meal count records. All sponsors must keep full and accurate records to substantiate and reconcile all submitted claims for reimbursement and to document that funds have been spent on allowable costs. The link meal counter must be used to document meal costs. Use daily site records to document the number of program meals. Meals are delivered or prepared by type: breakfast, snack, lunch, or supper. A designated member of the site staff must verify the adequacy and number of meals. Meals must be documented as first meals, second meals, and meals served to program or non-program adults. Records must be collected daily at each approved site. Here are some items to identify when reviewing meal count documentation. Be sure to read all of these items in its entirety on this particular slide. Potential common meal count problem red flags. Recording the same number of meals served day after day. Incomplete meal count records. Recording the same number of meals delivered as the number of meals served. Never or rarely recording second meal served or excess meals except on the day of review. Recording the first meal served in multiples of 5. Serving a substantially lower number of meals on the day of a review than on the previous day. If you have any additional questions, please send all questions to sfsp@alsde.edu. Thank you.